It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the Technology and Humanity Forum brought to you by Ashoka with the support of google.org. My name is Lorinda Garcia, and I'll be your companion here on SwapCard for the next 3 hours. On SwapCard, you'll find features that will make co-learning and connecting with fellow participants, changemakers, and social entrepreneurs more fun. Our topic today is tech and humanity, and it couldn't be more timely. We're all having to cope with a new normal in the midst of a global pandemic. We're all worrying about jobs and socioeconomic uncertainty. And the rise of populism and polarization has made the world feel less safe for many people. You may be wondering who I am. Well, I'm an Ashoka fellow from the Philippines, and I'm also founder of Be Inclusive. For the last decade, I've been building a database for the common good in Southeast Asia. The database that I'm building helps LGBTQ people women from racial and ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, and other underrepresented groups find safe, accessible, and inclusive employers and service providers. I have firsthand experience of the excitement in harnessing technology for the advancement of human rights. And I also know how often this work feels like it's an uphill battle. Now today, you'll hear from amazing individuals who are trying to improve the lives of Asia's 2 billion people. So let me give you a quick overview of what you can expect. In a moment, we'll kick off in plenary with a presentation from Ashoka about the trends in the tech and humanity space. And then our first panel explores the principles, skills, and capabilities that you'll need to navigate this new world. Our panel will include representatives from the DQ Institute, the Internet Frontier Foundation from India, and also Technical Tech. The second panel will reframe the narrative of the future with panelists who are changemakers, both young and young at heart, as well as Ashoka Fellows. There'll be a short break, followed by a smaller thematic roundtable discussions, after which you'll be invited to come back and we'll wrap up this session together. By the end of the day, I hope you'll be more inspired to co-learn, interconnect, and co-initiate new stories of the future together with young people using technology. Now remember, if you have any questions or if you need tech support, or if you just want to say hi, you can use the chat function in SwapCard at any time throughout the session. But right now, let's begin with a word from our supporters at google.org and a message from Ashoka's global leadership team.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Ralik, APAC lead for google.org, which is Google's philanthropic arm. It's a pleasure to be here today and an honor to welcome all of you to Ashoka Foundation's first virtual summit here in Asia. When the Ashoka Foundation team first shared details about the summit, I was personally excited for them to bring this to life. It's great to have a platform where nonprofit leaders, partners, and like-minded individuals can come together to learn, connect, and inspire one another on topics that matter, especially during this time. We know that this year has been particularly challenging for many people. The pandemic has led businesses worldwide severely impacted. And we also seen how billions of students and educators had to stop attending classes due to schools' closure. And for many of us, we had to experiment and figure out how to best pivot the way we work in order to stay productive and connected with one another. When COVID-19 hit, we at google.org shifted most of our efforts to focus on areas we can have the biggest impact, specifically around health and humanitarian, economic relief and recovery, and distance learning and education. Our vision at google.org is simple. It's to have a positive impact on the world, and we work hard to stay true to that by focusing our efforts through our funding, technology, and employee volunteers. Yet, despite the current circumstances we are in, I'm reminded by this saying that in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. If there is one thing I've seen from this unexpected outbreak, is the resilience and creativity of organizations, businesses, and individuals across Asia Pacific. I have also seen how technology can play such a critical role, especially in this time of crisis. Take Lakela, for example. Lakela is a fruit farmer and an entrepreneur in Chiang Mai, Thailand, selling avocados. When the pandemic hit, her business suffered and she decided to see what else she could sell. Thanks to the Asia Foundation, a nonprofit we are supporting, Lakela learned how to go online to find new how-to videos on YouTube and started planting other fruits such as peaches, mangoes, and star apples. She also started learning how to take good photos so she could upload it on her social channel and gain new customers. Stories like this show me that we all have the ability to adapt quickly, even during challenging times. I believe it's important for us to continue our work in this space and to work closely with our grantees to adjust and succeed as our countries reopen. But it has also reminded me that while it is possible, it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. As someone who was previously in the nonprofit world, I understand that finding the right resources, talent, and tools can be a challenge, and this current pandemic doesn't make it easier. This is why we saw the opportunity to support Ashoka Foundation to launch a 6-month pilot capacity building project in Singapore, Indonesia, and India. We see the great potential in capacity building programs because it provides nonprofit leaders with relevant knowledge so they can address immediate needs. At the same time, they can sustain and scale their efforts in their communities for the long term. But more than that, we wanted to build a program where various organizations could come together as a community to learn from one another, collaborate, and discover new ideas together. This vision holds true as John Tan, the founder of the Yobi and the participant of the capacity building program, shared with us. He shared that the benefits of nonprofits being part of the capacity building program is knowing you're part of bigger and broader community and you're not alone. There are others who are doing similar work, and being part of such a network can continue to drive and inspire you. In closing, may this Technology and Humanity Summit bring fresh perspective and insights. And I hope we are able to inspire one another to think out of the box, exchange ideas, and ultimately explore new ways in approaching new challenges ahead of us. Once again, thank you for having me, and may this be an enriching and fruitful experience for everyone.
Hello everyone. It's an honor to welcome you to Ashoka's first ever Summit on Technology and Humanity. A special welcome to our 30 social entrepreneurs who worked hard over the last 6 months in our Impact Accelerator, supported by mentors from Google, Kearney, and Accenture. I'd like to extend a special welcome also to the team from google.org who made this journey possible in the very first place, and our partners from InfoExchange and Satva. Finally, also a warm welcome to everyone who's online and curious and wants to listen in and learn more. It is very fitting that this summit is happening in Asia. For those of you who don't know it, Asia is where Ashoka got started. In 1980, we selected our first social entrepreneur ever in India, followed shortly thereafter by Indonesia and then Thailand. So in a way, Asia has always set the path for Ashoka Global for the field of social entrepreneurship worldwide. The theme Tech and Humanity could be more timely. More and more, our life is impacted by technologies. The internet, smartphone, apps. We now have access to experts, to technologies, to market, to education, to healthcare. The digital revolution has changed our life. Because of that, We are also grappling with new questions. Who owns our data? Who decides what we see? Who determines what is truth and what is not? In other words, how do we deal with the unintended consequences of technology? Technologies can accelerate the good and the bad in people. It is up to us to ensure that the good comes out. And this is where social entrepreneurs come in, because they are experts for society, they're experts for the citizen sector, they're experts for the good for humanity. They see the unintended consequences of technology and then figure out a way forward. At Ashoka, we've selected more than 3,600 social entrepreneurs around the world. And then we look at them from a bird's eye perspective and see patterns that tell us about the future, the better future, and how we can get there. So, what can we learn from social entrepreneurs about the field of technology and where that is headed? Well, we know a couple of things. We know that agency matters. Communities and individuals must have oversight of technology and be able to make choices so they can decide what is good for their own betterment. We also know that solidarity matters. Technology must be good for the individual, but also good for the collective, for all of us. And we know that everyone is important. Everyone must be connected and have access. And we must demystify the biases and power structures so we can make changes and demand accountability. In short, listen and learn from social entrepreneurs about how we can construct a better future. Our quest is that companies and governments give social entrepreneurs a seat at the table, so we all together can figure out how tech can work for humanity, how we manage that technology accelerates the good in people and not the bad. Thank you very much and enjoy this summit.
Thanks, Maria Ralik from google.org, as well as Constanza Friesen from Ashoka's Global Leadership Team for their warm welcome and opening remarks. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I find it hard to keep up with the innovations in tech because it's evolving so fast. And on the other hand, in Asia, we have such a vast and vibrant social impact space that it's tough to get a handle on what's happening at the grassroots. So to help you get up to speed on the big picture, it's my pleasure to welcome Sumitra Pasupati from Ashoka Global Partnerships team. Sumi will share insights from the new report on innovations from social entrepreneurs in India, Indonesia, and Singapore. Welcome, Sumi.
Hi, thank you, Lorendo. It's great pleasure for me to welcome almost 800 of you that have registered for the first Global Technology and Humanity Summit in Asia with the support of Google. My name is Sumitra Pasupati and I lead our global partnerships work here in Asia. Firstly, I'd like to thank an amazing team from google.org for envisioning that social entrepreneurs are critical in driving impact and social change. We started this conversation last year and we were encouraged by the resolute support by google.org through the pandemic for the 30 organizations. The organizations you see today will come from India, Indonesia, and Singapore, 30 founders and their next generation leaders. Over 23 organizations are reaching close to 300 million children. The others focus on planet, climate, health, and inclusion, and perspectives on digital safety, particularly around hoax, misinformation, children's rights, and freedom on the internet. These conversations come at a critical juncture in our history. And just to have a glimpse and a sense of what we are feeling into the future, I'm often reminded by a great quote by a dear friend and Ashoka fellow, Cynthia Rong from Forever Sabah in Malaysia. She says, "We're living in a time of unknown unknowns. The era for controlling for risk is over. We now need to manage, cope, and lead ahead for uncertainty and unknown unknowns in the future. Indeed, the pandemic has reminded us that we are entirely embraced by an entirely different future where change is the norm. And this is where social entrepreneurs can make a difference. Social entrepreneurs are at the grassroots and use citizen science and knowledge to create more good. Social entrepreneurs help us see the potential in solving the largest issues in the world, and yet are acutely aware of the many unintended consequences that exponential technology adoption brings. For the Global South, this is an untapped opportunity to positively impact more than 3 billion people through change making. So what is change making? Change making is the ability for every human to take empathic and creative action to solve problems for the good of all. In a world where technology is increasingly prevalent, the invitation for all change makers in the room is to create a more just and humane society. Importantly, I'm excited that this is our moment in Asia to shape our future together. In that pursuit, we undertook a study with social entrepreneurs in the Global South, and we found 3 big takeaways. Firstly, we need to continue to focus on the human agency, the human power to create more good. Leading social entrepreneurs are using technology to accelerate the best of human qualities, like creative problem solving, empathy, building teams that have distributed leadership, networked societies, and new ways of leadership with deep consciousness for all. Technology in this context is then being used to solve problems at the root cause level, where solutions were entirely unreachable before. Secondly, the key to agency and effective change making is to start young. As a mother of 3 boys, including 2 teenagers, young people are central to our future, and it's pretty much their future. So here are some ideas to guide our thinking. Over a third of social entrepreneurs are putting young people in charge. And in addition to that, folks like you will hear from today, like Dr. Park and Stephanie Hankey, are assembling the advisory panels with global stakeholders with young people at the table. Vishal and Septi are including young people from adverse backgrounds and vulnerable communities where the lack of infrastructure will leave children behind, and they are including them in the conversation. The other fact that we discovered in the study is that over 60% of social entrepreneurs are going to be deploying more technology to help children with learning and solve the education crisis, as well as youth development. So the question is then, how do we ensure that we're designing environments where there is learner agency to solve problems for the future? How do we make it digitally safe for children? How do we ensure we're not raising robots for the future? You'll see today several young people that give us great inspiration for the future. Ara, Gavita, Kamal, Anugrah, and Faye. They'll have a seat at the table next to social entrepreneurs in this important conversation. So we've covered human agency, which is important, and the ways to unleash it in the young. The third critical factor in our study is we must continue to foster and nurture offline communities to ensure participation of all. Social entrepreneurs continue to connect communities from the most remote islands of Papua to the tribal communities in India to create more change makers. The more diverse and interconnected that communities are offline, the more resilient online communities we will have, dealing with modern day challenges like hoax, misinformation, and bias. Listen to Zach, who talks about the unborn spirit very passionately from Indonesia, or Raj and Samina, who are involving women and children in tier 3, tier 4 cities in India. Many of our panelists are leveraging the power of our deeply rooted Asian culture and sense of community to bring people together to create for a better and more just society. Lastly, it is absolutely critical, and none of this will be possible if we do not actively build a new relationship and interconnect with governments, local and international foundations, and corporations here in Asia as important allies to continue to build a field to support systemic leaders. The study shows that technology companies will start to play a bigger role as system leaders to create a society for the good of all. So the opportunity is that we will need to organize quite differently. We need citizen science involved in the development of technology solutions. And again, social entrepreneurs and young people will need a seat at the table with enhanced resources. As you can tell, there's still much work to be done to overcome several of the important barriers, like allowing for new data ownership models that unleash the participation of all, enabling the creation of new economic models, striving for greater transparency and accountability, and creating better governance and rights framework. I'm excited about the endless possibilities, energized by the future, and thrilled that you can join us today. So let's get started. And up next is a series of videos from Dr. Park, Apar, and Stephanie Hankey that would help us understand how to navigate the future on digital safety and rights, moderated by our very own Constanza from Ashoka. We invite you to bring your curious mind to these sessions. Make sure you co-learn together, drop your conversations and your questions into the chat box, and use the connect function and interconnect with unusual allies in the audience to build bridges for a better world. Thank you very much, and see you very soon.
Hello everyone, my name is Yu-Hyun Park. I'm founder of DQ Institute. Why I started this journey? I started this journey 10 years ago. Why? It was because I was a mom. 10 years ago, there was a horrible incident in Korea. 8-year-old girl was raped by a child porn addict at 8 a.m. on her way to go to school. It was a huge, disturbing, sensational incident. And at the time, I was following the news on the online newspaper. And one of major online newspaper, I saw her story and a 16-year-old girl porn advertisement on the same page. That was a time I realized that it is not about one child porn addict. It is a digital media issue, a message that we are sending to our children. And it is about your problem, my problems, and every child's problem. That's how I started 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, not many people really care about the cyber risk issue. So at the time, I actually made up my mind about the 10 years vision. We need to make global standard for child online safety that every nation, every industry have to take a heed on. And we need 3 things at the time. I made in a diary. First, we need a global standard frameworks that every nation or industry can adopt. Number 2, there should be child online program that teach about the basic digital skills. We call it digital citizenship skills that any child around the world can access to. Third things that we need is the global measure index that keep monitor child online safety and digital empowerment of children. Fast forward 2020, we have DQ Every Child that brings the digital citizenship education to all nations. And so far, we reach out the children across 80 countries, over 1 million children. Now, we are working with the various partners to go to billion. Third, we developed world first child online safety index that can help nations to understand their level of child online safety in a holistic level. And now we are working with the various partners, international organizations, to make it into common measure for child online safety and digital citizenship. So that's where we are, and we have a long way to go. And I want to invite every one of you to work together, because this is not about one organizational issue. It's not about one person's issue or whoever issue. We have to work together, and I want to invite all of you to collaboration. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Apar Gupta and I work at the Internet Freedom Foundation, which is a digital rights non-profit working in India to serve people who have active internet connections. India has more than 600 million active internet connections and it needs to reach to a wider set of people. In fact, it needs to reach everyone today because the internet and digital communications offer a potential for human development for people not only to be users but to be creators. And this resonates with my own personal story of how I picked up the law as well as got interested in technology. So as a young boy, I was very fond of reading, but at the same point of time, I used to spend an inordinate amount of time on video games. And coming from that level of privilege, over a period of time, I was able to develop certain skills which helped me match the transformational nature of law, which can serve others and result in real political protection in terms of their freedom of speech or privacy, but also then matching it with another transformational framework, which is technology, which allows people to reach across to large audiences and also through their curiosity, amazement, joy and wonder actually discover skills as well as deepen and help them develop a level of expertise towards them. So when you bring the law or policy and governance and technology together, you get something which is really empowering for a lot of Indians who have lacked it over a large period of time. And in a deeply unequal society, that is a facility which needs to be there for more people at more points of time. A core part of my job motivates me towards addressing these inequalities, working on a range of issues from a lack of internet access to protection of people's privacy, data protection. The core moment, I think so, when I did pick up this work and started with a large number of volunteers was actually in the public sphere. The Internet Freedom Foundation emerges from the net neutrality movement in India and draws its roots from there. In terms of setting up a large public campaign in close to 1 million people, sending responses to India's telecommunications regulator and asking the telecommunications regulator, which is the TRAI, to actually preserve and protect net neutrality, which would eventually mean that the users actually of the internet get to decide what they want to actually consume over the internet rather than an internet service provider. A very simple principle which was upheld by the TRAI due to this massive public participation. This has informed our work as we have gone forward, and today the Internet Freedom Foundation bases all its regulatory interventions as well as approaches towards government institutions and policy engagements centered within a design of public engagement and actually addressing the felt needs of the people who have internet, but more importantly, those who still need it.
I'm Stephanie Hankey. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Tactical Tech. We started Tactical Tech back in 2003 because we could see that technology was being used heavily in the business sector, but there was very few people thinking about how it could be used in civil society. And there was a real hunger and a need to learn about how technology could impact civil society and could be used effectively by non-profits. And so through that work, we expanded over time, and through our expertise in thinking about how we demystify technology, we started to think about how this could be relevant to citizens more broadly and what kind of social, political and cultural impacts of technology we could see. We really specialize in training, learning, capacity building, helping people apply technology, think about technology and how it relates to their lives. And I think our work's important because we work on issues like critical thinking. We think about innovation in that space. How can we reach the public? How can we educate them in interesting ways? We use unusual techniques. So we, for example, might use humor, or we might use playfulness, or sometimes we're more serious. And we think about how to get people to connect to these issues. So for example, we have a touring exhibition we call the Glass Room, which enables people to firsthand explore these technologies and how they relate to their lives, and how they relate to issues they really care about. So for example, right now we have an exhibition focusing on misinformation, how it works, why it happens, and how it relates to the issues you may find relevant in your immediate and broader environment. And then we also work on digital literacy. So how can people actually think about the choices that they can make and about their own uses of technology. So in that we help people learn about things like digital privacy and digital security that may feel otherwise a bit inaccessible, but also digital well-being. So how do people make their own informed choices about the technologies that they want to use in their daily lives? Thinking about a vision for the future, working in technology has taught me never to really try to predict the future. It never really works out how you think it's going to work out. But at the same time, we have a project called What the Future Wants, which really tries to work with young people, right the way from teenagers up to young adults, helping them think about the digital environment that they inhabit, so the way that they use technology now, but also the one that they will inherit, so the way in which technology will change the way society works for the future generations, and how do they have a part in that process. It may seem overwhelming to think about technology in the context of people's work, especially where it's not something you know very much about. But in my view, there's always a way in which technology is relevant to what you're doing these days, and that everybody has a reason to care about these issues. And what we really need is a way for us in the future to design technologies and to build technologies in a way that fits with the kinds of societies that we want to live in.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy to welcome our panelists here with me. We have Dr. Park dialing in from Singapore, Apar dialing in from New Delhi, and Stephanie from Berlin. Hello again, and thank you so much. So we've seen a lot about your work already, and I'm happy to have the chance to ask you some more questions here. And let me start with you, Dr. Park. We heard the importance of your work is obvious. You're enabling children to master the digital work. And I was wondering what would you advise me very specifically? Let's say my 11-year-old daughter comes and asks me if she can have Instagram or TikTok on her phone. What would you say? Should I say yes, or what should I do?
That's a very difficult question. And I think that is every mother's questions these days. So your girl is 11 years old, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Did you know that the official minimum age that can register TikTok or Instagram and most of the social media is 13 years old?
There you go.
Yep. So, but our data actually shows that about 80% of children in the age group of 8 to 12 years old around the world, 80% are already on the social media, even though they're not supposedly on the social media. So that means that the social media has been already very much part of our children's life, not just about digital life, it is part of their life. So it is very natural for your girls to demand, actually not ask, demand, because all of her friends must have already an Instagram or a TikTok account, and they've been using it as part of their communications. So given that reality, I think it is important for parents to understand what the social medias are doing in part of their children's life. But at the same time, as a parent, you have to do the ground check and baseline check. So my girl is also 11 years old, and she's not allowed to be in the social media yet. But at the same time, I demand her to get the DQ score, which we developed, minimum 115 as a score. Across all 8 dimensions that we emphasize as a basic digital life skills. We call it DQ, digital citizenship skills. So what does it mean is that doesn't mean that children will be free from any cyber risk. It doesn't mean in that way. It means that the children have the basic capability to understand what are the risks online and how to deal with.
So as a parent, what should I look out for? What would you say? What are the important indicators you should watch out for as a parent?
I think I usually say 3 things. So one is that there are cyber risks that are very real. That doesn't mean that children are dangerous or they will have a harm. But a risk means risk. Cyberbullying, game addictions, social media addictions, fake news, privacy invasions, all these issues are real. Online predators are there. When we look at the percentage, as I shared in the previous conversations, 60% of 8 to 12 years old across the world have exposed at least one cyber risk. So that means this is real. So that's the first thing that the parents have to know. A lot of parents are not really understanding there is anything can be wrong in the social media, just like you're having conversation with your neighbor. It is not like that. So that's number one. But number two, but at the same time, as I shared in the previously, children are on the social media, and this is a basic communication tools. So be empathetic and then tell them that it is natural for them to have those means of communications. But number three is most important. They need to actually have a capability to understand how to minimize the risk and maximize the potential. So that's what the DQ is all about. As a parent, there are so many parenting tips and tools that children's they can help guide their children to be safe, but at the same time, to productive and creative in using social media. So there are a lot. So I cannot really say A, B, C, D, E, but parents have to be proactive in helping children to learn about these skills. At the same time, parents have to understand what are the boundaries they need to have. So number one, they're not supposed to be on the social media until 13. So that is the official guideline. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that children are not there.
Yeah. Thank you. That is very helpful. And Dr. Park, so when you see, look from your perspective at the different groups that are interacting with children, parents, teachers, but then there's also sort of policymakers. Where do you think, what is for you the most important group in order to ensure children master the DQ?
They're all different. They're all important, I have to say, because they all play in different functions. So we actually thinking about the digital ecosystem around the children's. So of course, the first actually support network will be parents and teachers. But unfortunately, because of generation gap and digital gap, parents, of course, needs to be in the front line of the children's interactions with the digital media. But our parents' generation never been taught, and we never grew up in those pervasive digital environment. So there's a limitation that current parents actually can help. Teachers at the same time is another group. They have to come from the education perspective beyond just the guidance. So you can think about the digital citizenship and all this extension of digital intelligence and digital skills is to be part of the mandatory education that children needs to have in the 21st century. So teacher group also important to approach as educations, just like a math and science. This will be the important subject that teachers have to equip to teach, but at the same time, they have to provide the resources. But we are not there, unfortunately. So there's a room for ICT company can play. And it is very, very important. And a lot of times we usually think about parents, teachers, and lawmakers or policymakers. But actually, the very important stakeholder here is the ICT companies.
And so what social media do?
Yeah. So there's a multiple way that like Google, like ICT company can play a role in. So number one, I always am a big advocate of safety by design. It should be more than just the CSR, or it should be more than just like teaching kids about the digital skills. There is so many actual safety elements that can be part of the business model of the ICT companies, of their products and services. So we hope that ICT company can go a step more further to support the children and provide the safety nets at the same time empowering tools. But of course, government have to be the role player. Key players. I won't go in details, but we published Child Online Safety Index 2020 in February, and which actually look at all different stakeholders, what are their roles are, and whether we play our roles in the right way. So
thank you.
There's
That's
a lot of things that we
tool.
can improve.
Yeah, an important resource for everyone to check out. Thank you so much, Dr. Park. I'm moving on now to Apar, dialing in from New Delhi. Apar, I saw you nodding as we were listening to Dr. Park, which indicates you share some of the viewpoints here. Is that correct?
Yes, and it comes from my own belief why the internet is central towards children and their advancement in society, because it's also self-learning tool as much as the risks are there. And that's why it allows them to come into a full bloom of their personalities. For me, much more personally, I possibly had very early access to the internet due to my parents sensing the potential of it being an informational resource, and it's led me to do the kind of work that I do today. And it kind of guides the vision and motivates a lot of my other colleagues also towards ensuring that internet as an access can be provided both in terms of it just being there for people in India, which is a very unequal society, shouldn't be based on a person's economic station or privilege, and the political character of the internet also, which allows them to receive information, tool themselves into being a participant in knowledge sharing, creation, also takes place. So that's why I just think it's a really powerful tool for people, and especially for a lot of young people in societies in South Asia, if not India, where you have traditionally been told lawyer, engineer, doctor, lawyer, engineer, doctor again and again. And sometimes people want to think much more laterally, and they want to do things such as be social entrepreneurs.
And you went the lawyer route first, is that correct? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, so it took some time, yeah, but I just resonated with a lot of the learnings Dr. Park suggested, also in terms of the design, thinking about how technologies, as they're being centered in society, need to account for social concerns within the design thinking process. And it's just tremendous to find these parallels in my own work here as well. But yeah, I was a lawyer, but then I realized that law is only one specific intersection with which you can impact social change, and part of my lawyering was towards social change. And sometimes you need to also look at the technology, because technology ultimately is scalable, and it is used by millions of people, and one small tweak can essentially do the same thing with a legislation or a very important constitutional court judgment can do.
So that leads us right into the core of your work with the Internet Freedom Foundation. You are, there are two important interconnected pillars of your work. It's access to the internet on the one hand and digital rights on the other, right? So give us some examples of where you have ensured both. Okay,
so a lot of people know that the political events which have happened in Jammu and Kashmir have resulted in an internet shutdown, which continues even today. So 4G internet access through mobile devices is not available there. So we have conducted a strategic litigation to ensure that there's a greater degree of evidence-based restrictions, if any, for the people. And it has resulted in incremental restoration even of 4G internet access through mobile phones, which is important because most people in developing economies do access the internet over mobile phones. And secondly, the difference in terms of the nature of access changes dramatically when you go from each band of cellular technology from 2G to 3G, from 3G to 4G. We know it because we use it and we've gone through those changes. So 2 districts, about 10 lakh people, close to 1 million people. But we also discovered in this process that there's a need to serve close to the 20,000 villages which have not been connected. And we started with a tourist destination, which a lot of people know and love, because you need to actually look at these areas not being as areas which will always be deprived, but also ensure the autonomy and bring it within the national debate. So you looked at the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, popular tourist destination, but that, unfortunately, because it's towards the Indian Ocean, those islands by themselves are unconnected to high-speed internet. So there's an undersea cabling project which has been delayed for a long period of time. We approached the Prime Minister's office, wrote to them, featured the voices of the people there, made it a public advocacy issue, and there has been a progress there. The Prime Minister has made a promising commitment there. We are bundling all of this work into what we call 4G for all, where we see internet as a access as an actionable human right. And I think it links very closely to digital rights, because we keep on saying that you can't deprive people of the internet when they do have access, okay, which is a fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression, which is, for instance, when you shut it down without any evidence, and we think evidence is lacking, results in economic harm, social harm. But at the same point in time, you need to provide it to people who don't have it. And I think there's such a beautiful complement between both of them, because it results in empowering people and making sure that they can be creators. They can also hopefully be social entrepreneurs. And I think everyone is, when they do get access to the internet, they find some way or the other of making sure that their lives, from their businesses to their personal lives, connect through it. And I think that's something very beautiful about digital technology, as much as the risks are there. And I think safety is an important area, but I do think they need this access to begin with.
Yeah. And the Internet Freedom Foundation draws a lot of its power from civic participation.
Yes.
That's what you pride yourself in. Yes.
So just taking these two examples, I'll just say that so what do we do for civic participation? We go into communities of art, culture. For instance, we've recently worked with the artist and made a comic around an illustrated panel comic set to which is shot as a video, then ultimately to the sounds of silence, to explain how children during COVID would require 4G internet access for remote learning and for talking to their friends. And we center all of our work in real, tangible advocacy, which emerges from the felt reality. So the thing is that there are a lot of organizations that do excellent research, but you do lack this space in India where you don't have organizations which can center all that research into a greater degree of tangible human need. So for instance, in Andaman and Nicobar, similarly, young people were reaching out to us. We said, would you like to be featured in videos and explain why you need access to the internet? So somebody said that we need to learn how to make our resumes and covering letters, and we need to look at formats. And when you put those kind of stories across, when you bring these communities together through digital tools, I think policymakers understand the prescriptions which are made by experts, lawyers, activists. The surveys start having a narrative, and we think that this kind of work which we are doing is very powerful and actually is leading to results for researchers. It is enabling a lot of change and bringing power to all of these interventions.
Thank you so much for explaining that. I see our other panelists agreeing here, and I would like to quickly go to you, Stephanie, with a perspective shaped out of Berlin, but also your work is global in nature. Citizen participation and sort of breaking down tech for everyone is at the core of your work too. So give us some examples of how you've done this. You've worked in many creative ways to connect with citizens and to unleash their power and their participation. So give us an example if you could.
Yeah, thanks. Our work is actually really nicely complementary to both Apar's and Dr. Park's work. We also use creative means to kind of reach out to people to help them understand technology, to try and kind of demystify technology is how we think about it, and help people find a way in which it connects to their own lives and to the things they care about. One of the things we've been doing is, for the last 4 years, we've been running a touring exhibition, and that exhibition is put together with artists, designers, and technologists who we've put together a show that kind of allows people to explore the question of how does technology change the way that they live personally, and also how does it impact the societies that they live within. And so we think of that as critical thinking work, public education work. How do we get a more nuanced discussion about technology? Not just like it's amazing, it will solve all our problems, or it's terrible, we should be afraid of it, but really something in the middle, and try to help people figure out kind of what's right for them, what their questions are, and what impacts the way they live. And we've turned that Oriental exhibition into something that many local groups can do. That's digital rights groups, librarians, schools, all kinds of different local actors are taking that exhibition and putting it on themselves and having their own conversations. And we've had over 150 of those exhibitions over the last few years. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's kind of, it's not possible to hold those exhibitions in the same way. But we also have something called the Data Detox Kit, which is something where people can go even further and kind of make their own choices about what's right for them. It's very much about being a bit more hands-on there, like what can they do when they're using technology to use it in the way they want to? How can they make sure that they're making good choices based on their own needs? And so we're trying to help people kind of equip them to do that. And that's, again, a global project. Our projects are very much focused on testing and developing a sort of core set of activities that work, and then adapting them to different contexts. So like with the Data Detox Kit, for example, it's now available in 29 languages. So we're really interested in working with local groups and helping them scale up the work within their own context and add and change the content depending on what they need.
Very impressive. And so with Tactical Tech, you examine new issues around technology, how they arrive in different contexts, and what responses are needed. So I was wondering, from your sort of long, perspective and work experience, what do you think is currently the most important one, and what do you think is coming up next?
Yeah, it would be impossible to pick one, I guess. I can say there's an interconnected set of things, which I think we really see this year with the coronavirus worldwide, that there's definitely an enhanced dependency on technology. And you just heard some examples of also how that dependency isn't working for some people at this moment. But for many people who are fortunate enough to have the connectivity, immediately there's the problem of, they're totally dependent on it for everything, not just work, but access to school and education, or access to social life, cultural life, and so on, services and so on. And that increased dependency does kind of, I think, sharpen the question of the bits of technology that aren't quite working for them. And at the same time, we've got an increased dependency on technology for how we access information. And we've just seen, the same thing with how democracies function overall. So some of our work is looking at things like how personal data is used in the context of digital political campaigning, how that works around elections. This is a very timely moment to be thinking about that, obviously, given what's just happened in the US. And how online content is used for influence of different kinds of communities and populations all over the world. I mean, I was mentioning the US, but I think we've seen that everywhere in the last few years. And at the same time, with access to information, which turns out, of course, to be vital in the context. It's always vital, but specifically in the context of a pandemic where access to reliable health information is key. And of course, we've seen an enormous amount of misinformation in that context. So I think that this kind of crossover of dependency on technology, not just for individuals to access information and to take part in society, but actually also for how governments are responding to the pandemic. We've seen that be really positive. We've seen, the amount of data collected be extremely important for different kinds of contexts. But we've also seen a lot of what one might think of as like very quick moves towards technology that were not necessarily wisely deployed. And then the same goes for technologies that are a bit overstretching. I think you see a lot of, like, for example, surveillance-based technologies being used, which in some cases has been welcome, but in other cases has maybe been unnecessary or not proven to work so well. So I guess I'm saying lots of things, but they're all connected to what's come up, what's come really to the surface in the context of the pandemic. And I would say they're not necessarily new issues. They've been there all the time, but they've just become much more obvious and much more poignant, I think. And I think we'll see next year lots of initiatives and organizations kind of coming up and dealing with some of those challenges.
So it's like the tension between agency and privacy on the one hand, and then surveillance and monitoring on the other, right?
Yeah, exactly. And control, I would say. I mean, like when I was talking about challenges people are having with dependency, I mean, we may use these tools, but all the tools that we're using, the value of them is our data. And so we don't really have many choices. We have a couple of really good tools that work really well, but there's only one business model. And if we're not comfortable, for example, using those tools or giving away our data in that context, we don't really have many other options. And I think that's something that's going to become a major issue. I mean, and Dr. Park was talking about children, Instagram being a perfect example, TikTok, WhatsApp, and so on. They're the very, very powerful tools that actually shape the way people live, but we don't have much choice. We can't really opt out of them, because if we opt out, then we're not taking part in the conversation. So I think that we've reached a point with technology adaptation, although of course many people still don't have enough access. Regardless, WhatsApp has billions of users, so it does have an enormous impact on such a huge part of the planet that we can't just kind of be happy with all the tools we have. Some of them are not really working the way we need them to.
Yeah. I see, our other panelists nodding again. So Apar, do you have any, let's put it that way, from what you heard each other say, I want to give each of you the opportunity to mention an aspect or elaborate on something, or throw in a perhaps slightly different view and comment on what you just heard.
So firstly, I greatly admire Tactical Tech's work, and it's inspirational just in terms of also informing our own work. So just to say that when somebody thinks about tangibility in terms of demonstrating data side harms or data side interactions, okay, because the argument has always conventionally been that it's intangible, so we don't see it, so we don't know what's happening. I think that's really, really powerful. And I think more people need to become aware of it. So that's another point of civic education. I think India specifically is right now debating a data protection bill. I think parts of Europe already do have it. So I think what Stephanie's core message is again centered in the larger theme of this conference about technology and humanity. And I think that's what's becoming very clear, because technology having such a core enabling function, it needs to now moderate itself rather than just being focused towards technology development for the sake of technology development, to factoring in much more, and sorry, this is where the lawyer comes out, much more constitutional vision of how societies were structured, where people debated and deliberated for long periods of time, that how should we as a society function together when we disagree with each other, etc. And it should be on basic principles of individual liberty, social welfare, and these choices were made, I think, so much more broadly across so many countries which are following a democratic pattern. And I think technology will also start centering those values more and more. And I'm in large agreements with what Stephanie is saying. The only perspective I would like to add is it's the impacts quite often which are felt in the United States or in Europe, they're much more severe in countries which may lack rule of law systems. And this is why it's important for the technology designers to, in fact, account for this and make choices in advance where the features by itself can be privacy and safety and security preserving.
Thank you, Apar. Very, very important. And so important. So this is why we are so proud that this summit is actually taking place in Singapore. Well, globally, but we are hearing many, many voices from Asia. That makes it so important. Dr. Park, sorry, I was interrupting you.
No. I am very glad to hear about both Apar and Stephanie's point of view, which I'm completely 100% aligned with both of you's view. One of the things that I want to point out is that I'm actually trained as a data scientist. So I'm coming from the much geeky side of the world. And I am being a bit cautious about the statement of the data being new oils. So not recent, after COVID, there's a huge rush toward the digitizations and AI technology, and which is fundamentally with the basis of the statement of data being oil, and which is a huge rush toward to digitization in current education's technology ecosystem. But if you think about more fundamentally, AI, actually, the biggest resources commodity is coming from the personal data. And how much control the individual can have this as a privacy, their data right and fundamental human right to keep their control over the data is quite limited. If you think about the big push toward the national and industrial push toward the AI, and individual and citizens say, hey, this is my data. It's actually two different parts. Of course, we need to find the common ground that can have the fair balance. But currently, the conceptual-wise, there is a bit of contradictions going on. So if you think about the data being oil, oil's taken off from the land, and you can plug in and get the oil out. But data from the human being, and is it okay for you to get plugged in and your data sucked out, right? And when we hear the AI being pushed, we really don't think of it as my problem. But actually, this is how it works in the whole mechanism. So convenience, privacy, and the AI, and all intertwined as part of our life. So as Apar say, it is not something very visible out there. It is actually happening in digital world. So the problem is that many actually people's conscience about this intertwinedness of different component of the national push for digitizations, industry exponential growth, quantum computing, and all this, and my right and my education and my children's safety. So this is today's world. So I think it is so important, and I'm very glad to hear that Ashoka is launching this initiative of technology and humanity, because we need to actually stop and all of us to think that why technology are invented to start with. So technology is only meaningful when it enhances humanity. And many times, as Apar say, the current economic system is actually pushing more exponential growth. And it is not coincidence that we see so much problems in disinformation, cyber risk, and all other in this speed gap between the exponential growth of exponential technology and our linear response to this technology without really understanding what's going on. So how can we reconcile this two? It's a big problem, and nobody probably have the answer right now. And I wish that this actually symposium and this type of conversation will promote for us to think, and all stakeholders in the society, academics, technologists, civic people, and the government sitting together and really think about where we are. And I think this table that bring all these stakeholders into one place is something that we have to really push forward and thinking about it.
Beautiful way to sum it up. With Stephanie.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to mention something else, but maybe you want to wrap it up, Constance.
No. Please go ahead. I was about to ask you.
Okay. I was just going to say, actually, everybody else mentioned their background, so maybe it's my turn. I'm actually a technology designer by training. So I'm an information interaction designer. And so I think a lot about how, and actually Apar mentioned this already, but I think a lot about the choices we make when we choose to design these technologies. And I mean that on a big level. I don't just mean the buttons and where they go and what color they are. I mean, the way, the fundamental idea behind the technology and the design of the engineering and the service overall. And we at Tactical Tech, we think about technology as a mirror on society. So I think that philosophical framework for technology is really, really useful because it helps you imagine what kinds of problems you might have with that technology. If you know enough about socio-political, cultural kind of trends in your context or with the users, then you can pretty much guess how that technology is going to play out for real. And so one of the things I've been looking at with my background in mind is that we don't have enough up-to-date relevant ways of designing technology that allows us to do that. So we've been working on something that we like to think of. So very often technology is designed for an individual user. Obviously, you'll mostly be aware of that, but within technology companies, that's also still how it works. And what we like to think of is designing for society as user. And we don't see that enough in the context of technology design. And in the biggest companies in the world, that's not the framework they use. They tend to frame technologies for individual users. And that's how they do their research as well and testing. So we've been pushing for sort of another way of thinking about design, which is much more responsible and much more appropriate to the fact that we're actually designing the the sort of digital built environment that we inhabit. So we've been, I mean, just in terms of looking for answers, that's one area that we really need to work on more. Policy is really important, but the tools have to get better as well. They have to mature.
Thank you so much. It's getting more and more fascinating, and I wish we had more time, but we do have to wrap up. But what I'm hearing from all of you, from your different perspectives, is that the common quest is how do we ensure that technology is humanity-centered, you know, which respects the individual, but also looks at the collective, and how do we make sure that technology brings out the best in us and not the worst, which is what your work is all about and what the summit is all about. I want to thank you so much for granting us your time and for participating. It's so exciting also to see interconnections between your work. And so I hope there are many more interactions and opportunities to come. I wish everyone who is listening in more inspirations and a beautiful and successful summit. Thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you, Dr. Park, Apar Gupta, Stephanie Hankey, and Constanza Friesen for their contributions in our first panel. But what stood out for me was just the situation that we're in. I mean, we have parents, educators, and children all trying to grapple with this idea of digital intelligence at a time when the world is being forced to learn how to get every student and learner online to continue education during the pandemic, and how it's still knowledge that isn't very widely known, and we need to get more people to understand this information. And it was reminded as people were sharing their tips for digital parenting, how in the documentary, the social dilemma that recently premiered on Netflix, how in the credits of that documentary, the builders of the social media platforms and the big tech companies were sharing their own digital parenting tips. And for many of them, they're being very strict in the way that they are allowing access or lack thereof to their children as they are growing up. So that just really stuck up for me as we were having that conversation. Now, in a moment, Sumi will be coming back to moderate our next panel that will explore young people taking the charge in tackling the world's problems. And remember, you can drop your questions in the swap card chat. There's already a very lively discussion happening. Dr. Park is actually online and fielding a lot of questions about people who are asking for digital parenting tips. In particular, one question where people are asking about how to manage a defiant teen. So check out the questions online, submit your own. But first, we have a video to help you get to know our panelists in our next panel, Ara, Gravita, Akshay, and also Vikram.
Hi, my name is Ara. I'm a young changemaker and learning enthusiast from Indonesia.
Hello, I'm Garvita, a young changemaker and environmentalist from India.
I remember one day I looked outside the window and saw a group of children playing on the streets without a mask during the school hours. And when I talked about this with my parents, they also shared that a lady who used to take care of my grandma recently came and asked for a $70 loan to buy a smartphone which has a WhatsApp in it for her daughter to continue the study and receive the assignments from the schools, because it is all using WhatsApp and online learning. So I think, you know, the access to smartphones and applications like WhatsApp or even Google might seem basic to us, but it is a privilege for other people out there. It became clear to me that many children either do not have the data or gadgets to access the virtual education, or we're finding the lessons too boring because the teachers still use the old mindset and method of teaching when the media has been shifted online. This situation even worsened with the absence of supportive parents who are either clueless about their children's education or we're too busy with the work to feed the family. This leaves millions of children behind. This encouraged me to take action and start the AHA project, which commits on improving access to quality education at home through providing creative learning tools which can be produced locally and disseminated through local champions in rural areas. We also enable the support system in the neighborhood to help facilitate the learning at home and empower every child to learn how to learn. Today, we have reached over 1,600 children across 35 villages in 12 provinces in Indonesia with the support of technology and thanks to the powerful individuals and changemakers who have contributed in the process.
I started my change-making journey when I was 13. Learning about environmental issues and building campaigns around it helped me learn how deep-rooted some of these issues truly are. I was deeply impacted by the water crisis that India faced in 2015. Reading about farmers taking their lives due to the lack of access to water and women and children walking miles simply to get a glass of water that we got without even moving a finger just didn't sit right with me. I soon came to learn that 40 million liters of water is wasted every year simply in the water that we leave behind in glasses at restaurants. And the triviality of this egregious number moved me. That day, I became committed to saving every drop of water I possibly could and launched Why Waste with the goal of changing the mindsets of people towards water. I was just 15 years old when I started out, and a lot of my family and teachers forced me to focus on my education. My friends taunted me saying, "Why are you wasting your time with Why Waste?" Restaurateurs refused to take advice from a teenager. Moreover, our solutions just didn't comply with them. However, I felt so compellingly connected to this that I refused to be disheartened. I reapproached the problem of water being wasted at restaurants with the glass half full concept, looking at water with a positive perspective. Our place cards told customers moving stories and restaurateurs were shown the monetary benefits. Filling the glass only half taught them to take just as much as they need and not waste. We went on to collaborate with the National Restaurants Association of India to bring this movement to over 5 lakh restaurants across the country. Today, Why Waste is India's largest youth-led organization working towards water conservation by preventing people from wasting water. We hope to solve the global water crisis through our simple and impactful solutions. We've been able to prevent over 6 million liters of water from being wasted and reached over 10 million people across the globe. We live in a rapidly changing and increasingly interconnected world.
Technology is growing at an exponential rate.
We see updates, innovations, and changes every second.
What others often refer to as disruption, but to us, young people, this is our lives. New technology requires a new mindset for us to best utilize it for the good of all. And change making is at the heart of it.
I'm Ashish Dhawan. I'm a founder of Central Square Foundation and also a founder of Ashoka University, and I chair the board of the university. What attracted me was this idea of system reform. So India has a huge system. 250 million children go to school, 1.5 million schools. There are 35 million learners in college. So it's a very, very big system. If you include the sort of preschool system, it's over 300 million students who are learning at some institution within India. So how do we get the whole system to improve, given that other than the top sliver, the top 5 or 10%, everybody else is being left behind. And so in school education, our focus was always on foundational numeracy and literacy, because we believe if children can't read by 3rd grade, they're left behind forever. The learning trajectory just flattens thereafter. All research shows this. And quite frankly, it's common sense. If a child can't read by 3rd grade, by 4th or 5th grade, can't transact the curriculum, can't read the textbook, can't comprehend anything that's going on. So these are foundational skills, and they need to be acquired between age 3 and 8. We also said that EdTech could be an important lever. The evidence right now is still emerging, And so we do believe that technology will have an impact going forward, but we want to do it in a very deliberate way, where it actually can be integrated into the teaching learning process, and it does lead to some impact. So it's not just hardware being thrown at children, it's actually integrated into different use cases that are actually relevant in the journey of a child, or the transaction in the classroom, or the skill building of a teacher. So that's the work at Central Square Foundation with 75 people, etc. At Ashoka University, we believe in the idea of a holistic education. And so at the sort of later stage, the bookend of education, it's really ensuring that students are well-rounded and they're not put into a straitjacket. And by doing that, by building one institution that does that, our hope is we can transform the system and get the system to move in that direction. I would say the biggest one is to keep in mind that we have to lift the bottom half. The children have been left behind, and if we can lift the bottom half using technology, using this mission mode to focus on foundational learning, using structured pedagogy, I think that will make the biggest difference in improving our education system.
My name is Akshay Saxena and I am Avanti's co-founder. We've been working for over 10 years on trying to create equity within the Indian education system. India has over 150 million students in its public schools. The majority of these students study in local languages. For instance, almost 40% of these 150 million students study in Hindi, which means that English language content is inaccessible to them. Avanti's specific work in this space focuses on creating equal opportunity or a level playing field for admission to India's public college system, especially in STEM programs. In addition to working in public school classrooms, Avanti also runs one of the largest online learning programs for low-income government school children in the country. Today, over 2 million students study every month from Avanti's digital content, and over 1 million students are connected to Avanti's content through daily WhatsApp messages. And while we've made great progress over the last multiple decades in India, there's still a lot of very, very major problems to be solved. Especially during the COVID-19 shutdown, it's been apparent that there's massive appetite amongst low-income students to use online learning as an important tool towards achieving their goals. India has only around 150 or 200,000 spots for more than 3 to 4 million applicants in STEM colleges. This means that you have to place within the top 10% in the country to have a shot of getting a subsidized public college education. Students who have STEM degrees are more than 4 times more likely to have access to successful careers in STEM. And this is why it's critical that they have access to quality science and math education as well as quality test prep when they come into high school. Today, Avanti works with over 50,000 students in government school classrooms. We also have amongst the highest acceptance rates into elite engineering and medical programs in the country, with over 60% of our students placing in the top 10% in the country. Our retention rates online, as well as the learning outcomes we are seeing online, are comparable, if not better, to outcomes that we've seen for higher income kids in private school systems. However, the context in which we're operating is incredibly different. For instance, the majority of our students have feature phones, and those that have access to smartphones are typically not using phones that belong to them, but borrowing these phones for a few hours a day from family members. We also found that it's really hard to get third-party applications installed for these children, which means that most of the teaching as well as the learning needs to happen on open platforms or common platforms such as WhatsApp. This poses several engineering problems, as well as several learning and teaching pedagogical problems. And this is why I think it's critical that not only do we pump money into solving this problem, but we also attract talent, and especially engineering and problem-solving talent. If we want to meaningfully reach the 150 million public school students that I spoke about, we will have to lean heavily on technology. And the majority of these students will have to use online learning as an important tool. But as we start to attack this problem, it's incredibly important that the smartest engineers in the world lend their brain power as well as use the latest technologies to try and address these issues. The solutions for these children are going to be dramatically different from the solutions we have found for wealthier students. And this is why I really believe that we are at ground zero today. We're starting to see traction, we're starting to find users, we're starting to see acceptance within the government for these tools. but we really don't have well-validated and high-quality technology that is designed for this problem. Which is why it's crucial that those of us who are technocrats, those of us who understand technology and have access to this knowledge are able to spend our time, our energies, and contribute our problem-solving capabilities towards engineering solutions for these students. And if we are successful, I'm also incredibly optimistic that in the next decade, we will actually create a quantum leap in equity as well as in outcomes for those who are the most underserved by our society.
Hi, everyone. Okay. Hi, welcome back, everyone. It's great to have a live panel running. And really would love to welcome Bikrama, who's joining us today, the co-CEO of Central Square Foundation, who will be taking Ashish's place today as he was called away for an important gathering. Thank you very much, Bikrama, for joining us at such short notice.
No problem. Look forward to this.
Yeah. Can you hear the sound? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Am I audible? Look forward to this. Thank you.
Is everyone good with sound? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just working. I've just got some problem with the sound. Just give me a minute.
Akshay, I am audible, right? I mean, we
yes,
can hear each other, right? Yeah.
You are, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
I can't seem to hear. Yeah. And alongside with us, we have Akshay and Gavita. Gavita, you were just finishing an exam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps we can all go on unmute so that I can actually hear you. I think I'm having some technical issues on the sound. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, can I test again on the sound? Can I hear
Can you
one
hear
of you?
me?
Got it. Okay. Wow.
Okay.
I'm finally learning to use tech at 48 years old. So let me do this again. Welcome again. Welcome everyone. Super excited and honored to have all of you. I think all of you are at the cutting edge of learning, of influencing young people for the future, and frankly, affecting potentially 3 billion children and young people in the global south. So today's conversation is really going to be centered around how do we prepare young people for the future. I think the pandemic in the last 10 months changed the rules of the game and demonstrated many things to us. Also demonstrated that we need a different type of society, different type of person, different type of human capital for this future that's constantly changing. But before we get into the deep dives, maybe we can do a real quick round of introductions. I'd love to start with Bikrama. You have a fascinating background, an Accenture consultant and social activist and a social entrepreneur. What took you from Accenture to Teach for India and now CSF?
Oh, thank you so much. Very excited to be on this discussion with everyone today. So, you know, I was one of the late bloomers into the development sector. You know, I call it, you know, I was in Accenture for over 7 years and I had already done my MBA from INSEAD and I called it like a quarter life crisis. I think I just realized one day that I can't do this all my life. So I actually took a sabbatical and at that stage said, look, let me go and do something completely different. And I actually joined one of the early batches of Teach for India and went and taught very young children, grade 2, grade 3 children in a public school in the outskirts of Delhi in an area called Kanpur. And, you know, for me at that stage, it was not an entire career shift, but it was just throwing myself into the deep end and taking some risk. And it was an immensely rewarding experience. And, you know, I think I learned a lot about myself and because it really puts life in perspective. And then more importantly, I sort of learned and really understood some of the challenges around the education sector. And then, coming out of that, I was fortunate, the ecosystem then wasn't what it is now. So they were, I would still say, far and few between, few and far opportunities which could sort of absorb, experienced talent. But Ashish Dhawan, who's the founder of Central Square Foundation and Ashoka University, had set up Central Square Foundation, and he was looking at expanding his team. So I joined him very early on, and so it was very much like an entrepreneurial role, and been with CSF now for nearly 8 years, and enormously rewarding. Waking up every day and trying to do a small, contribute in a small way to a very big problem, and feel, still even after a decade now working towards improving school education, quality of learning, I still feel cautiously optimistic that change is possible, and look forward to talking more about our work at CSF as we go along.
Great. It's really fascinating. A good friend of mine at the Brookings Institute, Rebecca Winthrop, she shares there's a 100-year learning gap between the West and the global South. And even if we did do many of the interventions that we already know to do in education, we will still have a 65 to 85-year gap between the West and the global South. So we need to change this paradigm. We need to create a shift. And so I wanted to start with you, Vikrama, because you talk about, Ashish was talking about systems transformation in the email, in the video earlier on. What does that look like for you at CSF?
Yeah, so at CSF, we've taken on the ambitious goal of trying to create systems change, contribute to learning improvement at the scale of the largest system. And, when and we've been at it now, like I said, for almost 8 years. And, in the early years, we were more in sort of experimental mode, and very much, like you said, trying to identify some particular levers that could improve learning. But then, as we sort of went along and we learned and made mistakes, and I think we really realized that, look, we need to look at this problem from a different end, rather than just looking at certain levers, really try and diagnose what is the nature of the problem in school education in India, and then how we should approach it. And that diagnosis really got us to this conclusion that, look, the challenges around learning in India start early, and a very large proportion of children, but anything between 50 to 70% of children don't even learn to read with meaning. And because of that, in some sense, that learning trajectory just flattens. And then the rest of the system is just in sort of repair mode. And, and hence, if you really, really want to sort of, improve the quality of education, you need to go upstream, get everyone to read with meaning, and then really put them on a pathway of success. Of course, a lot more things need to happen in middle school and high school and secondary school, to really put them on a sort of a pathway for the knowledge economy. But we believe that, look, if you don't get to foundational learning, none of those other things are going to matter anyway. So we really took on the system's goal to improve foundational learning, and we, but we looked at the problem holistically. So once we identified that, look, foundational learning is the problem, we then actually tried to sort of diagnose, okay, why isn't foundational learning being achieved in India? We've had USR data for over 15 years. Why isn't, in some sense, policies and the ecosystem sort of, solving this problem? And our diagnosis got us to really that there are 2-3 big binding problems. One was that, the policymakers in India are not recognizing that foundational learning should be their number one priority. Improve the learning crisis is a buzzword. And if you really, really push decision makers, they couldn't really unlock what is it in the learning crisis that you're working towards to solve. So everyone's just trying to boil the ocean. Lots of interventions, no focus, no targets, no goals. So that's what the first thing we tried to focus on. Can we build salience? Can we make foundation learning the number one priority of the school education sector? And a lot of progress has been made on that, with the national education policy coming in and calling out foundation learning as a key priority, and among the only things in the national education policy that's being rolled out in mission mode. And the other big problem we found around foundation learning was the supply side of it. Okay, even if you sort of say, okay, I make foundation learning a priority, how do you improve it at system scale? And there we interestingly found that there were lots of nonprofits like Pratham and Room to Read, which had actually had shown that, look, at reasonable scale, at a district, 1,000 school scale, you can improve foundation learning, but no one had done it, like I said, at a state government level, 30,000 school level. So we said, can we work across, 3-4 state governments and bring in a coalition of partners who can actually demonstrate over 3 to 4 years foundation learning can be improved. So we are now working actually across the states of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, and now soon Haryana, and really, working on a system-driven program. Now, this is a state-driven program. CM is launched by the Chief Minister. It's all the state's resources. We are just providing technical assistance and project management support, and maybe some M&E. So, so a lot of our work is around that. I can talk as we go ahead about some of our work around EdTech as well. We really believe that there is an opportunity, even before COVID, but now even post-COVID, a huge opportunity to unlock learning at home. And I know Akshay will be talking about that. And we really feel strongly about that. And that's a core anchor of our strategy. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Vikram. I'm definitely going to come back and really talk about coalition and cracking the relationship with government. I think that's something our Indonesian community here listening, as well as our community in Singapore, would be very interested to know the how-tos, as well as that tech. But let me pivot to Akshay right now. Akshay, you're on the other end of sort of a life of a child with high-stakes exams. I have a son soon to do his university admission, so I understand the stress and the importance of transforming life trajectories. Of course, from a very different place of privilege. My question to you is, tell me a little bit about your work, and particularly then, is it just enough to achieve excellent scores?
Yeah, so we work in probably the most stressful time in most kids' lives. So, I think just picking up from what Vikrama said, right? So foundational learning is a big, big problem in India. So just to start off with, by the time we get to the kids, which is typically grade 9, only about 10 or 12% of them, of the kids who started school, are actually at grade level, right? We've lost a bunch to just attrition from schools, and then you lose, and many of those who are in school aren't really at grade level. And I think a lot of our work over the last decade has involved creating at least a level playing field for this 10%, right? So of 100 kids that start school from low-income homes, 10 will be at a point where they're at grade level. They've, I think in many ways succeeded despite the system, right? And gotten to a point where they're doing well. And unfortunately, there's about a 30-fold gap, right, between them getting into top-end colleges and well-to-do kids getting into top-end colleges. And really, a lot of our work has involved bridging that. And what we found quite remarkably and very shockingly to us as well is with the older kids, if you hand over agency to them, which is if you basically allow them to teach each other, learn on their own with quality resources and just space and reasonable guidance, and you provide them a nurturing environment, these self-learning communities are actually able to outperform pretty premium test prep, right? So just as a matter of example, our acceptance rate from our programs in government schools is 60% on the JEE, which is the big engineering entrance exam, which has a national acceptance rate of 10%, right? And these are all rural, low-income kids who, of course, have had the benefit of being in an elite public school or a government school through a test. But it shows that the kids who it does not sort of the backgrounds that these kids come from don't really matter as long as we met our obligation of teaching them properly through high school, right, or throughout their schooling system. And on the other end, we've been, for the last now, I would say half decade, really doing a lot of work to see, is it even possible to bridge the gap once the kids come to grade 9, right? So again, starting off from the point where only 10% of them are really of the net kids, and about 20-25% of kids who are still in school are at grade level in grade 9. Can you really bridge enough for school to be worth their while, right? And we're finding interesting things. I think on the good end, through after-school programs, we've done these big research studies where we've shown we can move them multiple grades in a single year. On the bad side, and this is again other RCTs that we've done, we're showing that often introducing new ways of learning that late can actually worsen things for kids as opposed to status quo. So it's a very complex problem. And I think the answer to your second question, Sumi, lies in both of these realities, right? I think for the kids who are performing at an elite level, right, and there's always going to be a percentage who are sort of succeeding largely because they are just awesome, right? And they found a way to learn and study, and they've had some relative privilege. For those kids, really just getting out of their way and allowing them to go to elite colleges is probably the answer. And that's enough for them because they already have what we call 21st century skills, right? They're autonomous, they have grit, they know how to learn on their own, they know how to collaborate. They do really, really well. And most of our kids actually do much better even in college than they do before they enter college. For all the other kids, though, I think it's there's no way that it's enough, right? I think one, because it's very unlikely you'll get them into elite schools in large numbers. Two, I think it's very, very unlikely that whatever college you get them into is even going to get them what you'd call a respectable good job, right? So there's an entirely different question to answer as to what should these kids do, right? Now that they're 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, are often behind grade level. What can they do that's relevant to their lives over the next 3, 4, 5 years that makes them employable and that gives them a certain degree of dignity that they deserve, right? And that is very much an unsolved question, right? But again, echoing, I think, some of Vikrama's optimism, I think a question that we can really answer with some degree of positivity today, because the jobs have changed so dramatically that even kids who go to good colleges aren't really fit for them. So I think there is a chance to be really, really disruptive now and say, look, the global sort of job economy is completely turned on its head. Nobody knows what they're supposed to do. So can you really create an alternate way where these kids can access that economy? And it would require turning school on its head, but that's kind of what we are in the business of doing. So it's fun.
That's great, actually. That's a great segue because that's exactly why we have 2 young people on this panel, because it's very much their peers and their future. Ara, let me start with Ara and then Gavita. So what do you think about what you've heard from Akshay and Vikrama? I mean, if we really need to change the script and we know the world is changing, what do we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I can totally resonate that education is so important to improve one's quality of life, and also it is widely recognized that mastering literacy or even STEM is essential for living in a modern society, and literacy is a human right. I mean, it is also key to achieving many development goals like increased productivity and poverty reduction, and it is also a key to facilitate any further learning. And it is so important that great organizations like Central Square Foundation and Avanti are highly committed to the cause as well, to eradicate illiteracy and transform, math and science learning outcomes as well. But then the question will be then what's next? Like Akshay mentioned before, like the jobs in the future haven't yet been created, and just like how we need digital literacy as the technology advances, another set of skills or literacy is needed to thrive in a world that is increasingly defined by change. In fact, we are now currently facing unprecedented challenges, the social, economical, environmental, which were driven by the accelerating globalization and a faster rate of technological developments as well. And at the same time, those forces are providing us with lots of new opportunities for human advancement as well. And the future is uncertain. We cannot predict it, but we need to be open and ready for it. As a young person itself, I felt that, we are now preparing ourselves and the next generations for jobs that have not yet been created, that will be using technology that have not yet been invented to solve problems that, have not yet been anticipated before. And it will be a shared responsibility to seize these opportunities and find solutions. And I think to navigate through such uncertainty, students will need to develop more than just reading, math, and science. They need curiosity, they need imagination, resilience, and self-regulation. They will need to work in a fluid team and be a leader who respects and appreciates the ideas and perspectives and values of others as well. And they will need to cope with failures, with rejections, and to move forward in the face of adversity. I think their motivation will be more than just getting a good job and high income. They will also need to care about the well-being of their friends, their families, their communities, and the planet as well. I mean, yeah, it sounds a lot, but if I can put it in a simple term, to be a contributor, an active player in this rapidly changing world, I think everyone needs to master change making. making the best use of their ability to read, ability to write, count, and their knowledge in science and technology they have acquired to solve the problems they face and create positive changes for the good of all. And education really plays a critical role in equipping the learners with agency and that sense of purpose, as well as the competency they need as well to be in charge of their own lives and to contribute as well to the lives of others. And that's what we're currently doing in Ashoka with the Ashoka and Changemakers, and the movement of everyone at Changemaker World as well. And in AHA project itself, the organizations that I founded as well, we're trying to shift the learning paradigms from just acquiring the knowledge into learning how to learn and how you can put that theories that you have learned into practice for the good of all.
Thanks, Ara. That's very visionary and really inspiring as usual. I just want to draw Gavitar in. So if I'm listening to Ara correctly, what I'm really hearing is that we need to shift the narrative around how young people grow up. So it's not just mastering knowledge or skills. Yes, we need to get into foundational literacy, and we need to get into acquisition of knowledge through STEM, but it's a little bit more than that. And you're in university right now, you're a serial entrepreneur as well, and you're building the movement. What are the practical things you think we can already start doing and shifting as a young change maker?
Yeah, thank you, Sumi, for having me. And it's been lovely to hear everyone and their perspectives. I think it's so diverse yet unified, everything that, we're all saying. And the first thing that really resonated with me as I was listening to Akshay and Vikrama was my father, who's almost 30 years older to me, was saying that he studied the exact same syllabus that I did when I graduated. And it's pretty ironic that, we're at the same level. And when you talk about, when we see edtech startups today that are unicorns, the reason they are at that level is because we need the disruption in education, right? Young people today are not satisfied with the education that they are receiving from schools. They want to go beyond that. They want more, and they want more unique ways of learning. Of course, because of, the volatile, ambiguous, uncertain, and I'm going to use the VUCA world, that we're really transitioning into. It's become so important for us to equip every young person to be able to not only survive, but even thrive in that world. And like Ara said, change making is primary to it. And, the 4 key values, empathy, teamwork, leadership, and of course, change making, are what will help us catapult the youth of today into the world of tomorrow. And, when you talk about, so you were saying simple things that we can start changing right away. So I came across this really touching post, I would say, recently, which said that, so there was a color pencil on the screen, and it was, this, it like, I can see the color in the background on your screen, Sumi, but it was like what you would say skin color, probably. Mm-hmm. And it was like a light peach, and that color was defined as skin color. So as we grew up, we learned that color was skin color, and that's when students or anybody, in fact, refuses to accept that skin color can be any other color. And that really is the start of all of the inequalities. And so changing simple things at that level can actually make a huge difference, because you see, this is not skin color. This is just a peach. This is like a peach color. There's so many more colors in the world, and anything can be skin color. You can have skin color that's blue. You can have skin color that's green. It can be brown, black, white. It can be absolutely anything. And so changing simple narratives like that is what is, going to be very valuable in helping us build youth, or just have change makers and young change makers who are looking at the world from a different perspective. And something very simple that, we've done at Y-Waste as well. We come up with this series of 13 stories where we talk about, we've converted fables, the stories that we all grew up learning, fairy tales and fables, into not just, Cinderella left the glass slipper and ran away, but more around how it's more important for us to realize sustainability, and for us to know that being a change maker and young people making a difference is what is going to
what is going to be the future. And so when you read stories like this to kids who are, let's say, for example, between the age of 5 to 12, they grow up with that mindset that I can be a change maker and I can make a difference. And so I think making changes, making powerful changes in narratives from a very young age can have a much larger impact as we build the youth for the future.
Thank you. Thank you. I definitely resonate because our social entrepreneurs have demonstrated how important agency is, right? At an intrinsic level. We can do that young. That definitely has a higher stickiness. So I love the idea. So going back, we've got 4 minutes left and over to Akshay and Vikrama. The call is for disruption. The call is for innovation. The call is for a change, and we're putting young people in charge of their learning. Akshay, you've got some new exciting vision that you have for the future. I mean, we're really wanting to be designing a pathway for the future as opposed to designing a pathway for today. I think that's what Ara and Gavita are challenging both of you. What does that look like? Can you briefly share what you think is the big potential going forward? I think we've talked about it a couple of times.
Yeah, so I think the thing that's really, really exciting, and I think especially something that COVID's shown us, right, is that that the young people in India, and I think largely in the global South, are willing to take personal risk, economic risk, right, and actually stretch themselves to access technology that helps them get better, right? So at this point in time, between I think CSF and us, I think we have about 5.5 million kids learning online every month, right? And these are kids who probably never learned anything from a mobile device. And I think what that leads to, and sort of to paint a sort of a grand vision from it, right? I think to me at least, it says it's completely possible to create sort of this new paradigm of learning entirely online, so it can instantly reach anyone who wants to access it, right? It'll of course require a lot of partnership with the government. It'll require all kinds of agents to work in cohesion, but it's much more likely that the future school of the world will end up being at-home learning digitally online, right? And I think we have to protect that vision fiercely to make sure that it doesn't get co-opted by, by commercial interest, by policy, right? And truly allowed to be open and free to the to the millions of kids that need this, and they need it to be free because it needs to be a public good. So if we can do that, if we can create the school of the future in the cloud, completely free and open source, I think that can start to shift things faster than we might imagine.
Yeah, and then we can put all these peer stories from Gavita and Ara on it too. And Vikrama, can you close us off? Where do we need to go? Where does that, Central Square Foundation, your work with, you've got launched with Diksha, TikTakland. Where do we need to go? What's next?
Yeah, so I think, look, I think EdTech today is, today being unlocked for what we call India One, this sliver of some 10 million children in India, and the next 250 million children are just not unserved. The innovation is not targeted towards them. So I think I really feel that, EdTech now needs to be energized to really solve problems and build solutions for that segment. And right now, there's just a few public goods, like Avanti and TikTakland with CSF and Google co-funded, but we need much, much more. So I really feel EdTech is, in some ways, can play a very, very important part in improving learning. And I really think that we need to be really ambitious towards trying to sort of leapfrog this challenge around foundation learning. I don't think we've got a generation. We have the luxury of just using a generation to just work towards reading with meaning and foundation learning. We already, like you said, we are 100 years behind. So we really need to think out of the box, and and maybe tech and putting the power back in the hands of parents and students could be a complete alternate pathway, alternate manner to work towards this problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vikrama, Akshay, Gavita, and Ara. It's been a really fascinating conversation. I hope we can keep talking. We have over 700 people listening to you, quite a few nonprofit organizations as well. we can hope to continue this journey together with you. So thank you very much. And I'll hand it back to Lorinda. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks again to all of our panelists and also to Sumi for her artful moderation. For people who came late to the Technology and Humanity Forum, my name is Lorinda Garcia. I am your companion for the rest of this session. The moment that you've been waiting for is coming up very soon, the roundtable discussions. First, you're going to be having a break. I do want to also remind you to post your questions into Swapcard. There are already a couple of questions in there from this last session around business models and also how to address digital literacy issues in the community. So please make sure to feed in more of your questions and participate in the very vibrant chat that's happening there. Keep your Swapcard connection open while you go and grab a snack or step away to go to the toilet. I'll see you back here in Swapcard for 10 minutes after you are refreshed, energized, and ready to go. So that is 4:30 India time, 6 o'clock Jakarta time, and also 7 p.m. in Singapore. So catch you then.
We'll often find the fingerprints of Ashoka there.
How do we change the world for the good of all? It's always a big pattern change idea, but only if it's in the hands of a really good entrepreneur. It's that combination.
Bill's brilliance was he was one of the earliest to recognize the social innovators who were attacking problems in incredibly new and enlightened and different ways. The oddballs, the misfits, the folks that their families and friends couldn't figure out what it was that they were doing.
When I was 10 years old, I built a solar car. The battery of my car, it wasn't charging well enough. How can I charge my car more efficiently? Why are solar panels so limited?
Over 80% of the Ashoka Fellows have started something by their early teens.
I had a chance to present my project at a science fair. And the girl sitting next to me was telling me you could actually take this technology to Indonesia. And I feel like a light bulb kind of went off in my head at that moment.
No one can ever tell them that they can't change the world after that.
Something that I built in my basement is now being assembled and maintained by people in Mexico that need this technology.
They cannot be a happy person in life until they have changed the pattern of society. And so the entrepreneur is in a lifelong creative process.
I love the fact that people are Ashoka Fellows for life. Once you're in that community, you're always part of it.
The better job that we can do in helping them be architects of their own solution, the more effective that solution is going to end up being.
Being involved with Ashoka set a high bar for the rest of the philanthropy that we get involved with, because I can see these are people who are driving true change. I want to go with the people who are passionate.
People who work for Ashoka all around the world are doing the search for fellows in their countries. They really understand the context of the problems. They understand what a new idea is and what a potentially good one looks like.
They were asking questions like, how are things going to be different in rural Kenya in 10 years? Typically, I was used to being asked, what is your budget going to do between now and the next 2 quarters?
The course of human history has been towards a more and more empathy-based society. And this is the critical moment where we shift to everyone being powerful. It's the only way that you can have real equality.
With Playworks, we're going in, right, and we're working on recess, and we're bringing play into the school in this very constructive, positive way. But it isn't about us coming in and doing it for the kids or to the kids, but rather by norming empathy. The kids become the primary actors, and it's the kids who are achieving these really significant changes.
What Ashoka is working on to make sure that everyone has that gift, that we really do become a changemaker world. There's no way that the problems can outrun the solutions.
At the heart of Ashoka is a design principle of how you treat each other. How do you allow someone to be a change maker?
Ashoka is one of the ultimate talent scouts and the ultimate peer network of people who are working individually and now have been collected together to drive all kinds of work forward.
Meeting the people who had struggled for 30 plus years humbled me. Beyond the energy that I could get from a fellow, there were actually insights to solving problems.
Ashoka is really providing us with the platform to leverage the talent so that we can actually solve these issues on a global scale.
Most important about what Ashoka is doing is that they make people believe that change is possible. That belief can go viral.
We're building the financing platform for this new distributed clean energy world.
Our mission is to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty.
Changes the trajectory of life of high school students by engaging them into a path to a professional world.
The idea that one day every kid in America would get to play every day.
Same language subtitling takes children from not being able to read anything to actually being able to read newspapers in about 3 to 5 years.
Working on sharing biomedical research.
Our mission is to improve health in underserved communities using mobile technologies.
And our mission is to increase the number of low-income students who graduate from U.S. colleges and universities.
We're not going to wait for good news. We're going to go out and create it. And we're going to create it with these networks of change makers.
And welcome back from the break. I hope you're raring to go after you've had a bit of time to collect your thoughts and fully energized for the roundtable discussions. So in a moment, we'll be sending you off to your respective roundtable discussion rooms. But first, just to help us get a bit of a set the tone for these sessions, I'd like to welcome Rajesh Varghese and also Daniela Mattiello from Ashoka. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here.
Is Daniela there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, wonderful. Good to see you, Daniela. Good morning.
Danny, we are at social distancing, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that I want to make sure that we give our participants as much time for the roundtable discussion. So this is just going to be a very brief conversation. Rajesh, I'd like to start with you. So at a high level, what can our participants expect when they go into these roundtables?
Thanks, Lorindo. Thanks for having me here. We have 9 amazing roundtables, and the underlying theme in all these roundtables is technology and how technology links it up. And in all these roundtables, you're going to hear stories of impact. You're going to hear stories of change makers, stories of social entrepreneurs, stories of social impact leaders, and the work that they're doing on the ground, especially with technology. You're going to hear some interesting conversations around how technology is connected to faith-based organizations, how young people are curating content using technology, how technology has created an opportunity at the time of COVID. So that's all that's happening in all these sessions. Some amazing, inspiring conversations from changemakers.
Right. And we're covering so many different topics, and people can find out what are the topics in a swap card, so we won't rehash the information that people can already see. I want to throw to you, Daniela, and ask you, in your opinion, what do you believe makes these roundtables so special?
Yeah, thank you so much, Laurinder. I think that what is really a great opportunity for this roundtables is learning from the people that are creating solutions on the ground. I think that at Ashoka, we really believe in the power of this, social entrepreneurs and their capacity to really see the future because they are really connected to the communities. And we have been, I think in the past few months, really trying to figure out what are the key elements that these solutions on the ground have in common. And the things that Constanza have talked about, the importance of agency and the importance of putting, seeing everyone as powerful. I have been just following the chat and there's so many great ideas and the importance of discussing them. So very, very excited about these roundtables.
Yeah, there's definitely so much energy to be harnessed, right? You can see, the emotions is just palpable from the chats. So finally, for both of you, my question to both of you is, and you may have touched on it a little bit, Danny, but what are you personally excited for going into these roundtable discussions at a personal level, and kind of putting the professional side, professional head to one side for the moment? Rajesh?
Yeah, I think it's amazing how technology has got 3 countries together to share some really powerful stories. So we have changemakers and social entrepreneurs from India, Indonesia, and Singapore working with some of the biggest populations in the world. So I'm really excited to hear their stories, right? I'm also excited about my panel. It's called COVID-19 and the Digital Divide. So please do come for the panel. But I also can't make up my mind which other roundtable to attend because they all sound exciting. So I invite you to look at the list and choose wisely.
Great. So make sure to check out the COVID-19 panel if you want to have a
panel. But I think that I have always believed in the power of technology to make, I think, a huge change. So we have panels, I think about climate and planet. And I think that in the realm of bringing together this idea of being both a coder and a change maker, I think that if we're really going to leverage the power of technology to build a better society, then it's important for us to see ourselves as the creators of technology as well, not just as, you know, the users of technology. And I think that ultimately we want to see how people that are, you know, in more vulnerable positions can also, you know, be part of this change. So anyways, a lot of the panels are very exciting. From my perspective, I am also very curious to see how the social entrepreneurs and the change makers are solving the questions of, you know, bigger questions, how they tackle, you know, privacy and how they are making their solutions sustainable, so we can actually have a big impact.
Great. Thank you, Daniela. I love how you brought up the issue about creators and really underscoring the agency that is afforded to us with technology that really sets it apart from other media and other spheres as well. So thank you so much. Thank you, Rajesh, and to Daniela as well. I'll let you both go so you can prepare for your roundtable discussions right now. Meanwhile, I'm going to tell our participants how they can join a roundtable. So you can join the roundtables by just following 3 simple steps. The first one is in Swapcard. Look for the button on the homepage that says number 2, roundtables, and click on that button to see a full list of the roundtables. Then select your topic of choice, and finally, click the red button to enter the roundtable, and you'll be brought into the discussion. If you're experiencing any problems over the course of trying to join or throughout the roundtable discussions, just do a shout out for assistance in the Swapcard chat. Meanwhile, I'll see you back here in Swapcard in 30 minutes, and have fun in your roundtable discussions.
See you.
See you.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you found the roundtables helpful and rewarding. As a reminder, my name is Lorena Garcia. I am your companion for the Technology and Humanity Forum. I actually had a chance to go and check out a couple of the roundtables, and there were a couple of things that really struck me. I went into the roundtable about misinformation and hoaxes, and I just picked up a soundbite where there was research in India that had found that hoaxes and misinformation travels along the internet in Indonesia 6 times faster than the truth. And that really goes to show how much we need more people to be involved in better data governance, and also helping people improve on their digital literacy and being able to discern information with much greater skill. Another thing that I had found in one of the other sessions that I dropped into was, given that that our conversation is really looking at empowering young people, the perennial issue came up about how do we not only provide more support for young people to acquire the new skills that they need to navigate this digital age, but also get access to the opportunities for young people to practice these new skills in the field, so they don't just remain theory in their heads. And these types of dilemmas or challenges have faced every generation, particularly when new technology has been coming to the fore. So those are just a couple of things that were my takeaways as I dropped into these roundtable discussions. And I'm sure that you've got your own. And so please keep the conversations going on Swapcard. Our time today is almost drawing to a close, but before I say goodbye, allow me to introduce Ibu Nani, a Ashoka Fellow and founder of BECA, that is also known as the organization Women Headed in Family Empowerment. Ibu Nani is also the Southeast Asia lead for Ashoka, and she'll be sharing some closing remarks. So take it away, Ibu Nani.
Changemakers and distinguished participants, it is a great honor to speak in front of you virtually today. My name is Nani Zulminani from Indonesia. I'm an Ashoka Fellow Social Entrepreneurs and appointed Southeast Asia Ashoka Leaders. First of all, I would like to congratulate all of you participants, Google and Ashoka Southeast Asia team, and contributors for great success in the summit, Technology, Humanity. We cannot imagine how life would go when the pandemic hit the world if information technology has not developed as it is today. But we witness how advanced information technology has helped us transform the challenges into opportunities during the pandemic, such as transforming our social interaction into virtual space as the consequences of social distancing policy. The development of information technology has indeed influenced and changed various aspects of human life. It helps advancing education system, production, and transportation. However, technology has also resulted in deeper gap and inequality. My 6-year-old grandson, Ashoka, has started his first elementary school virtually this year. He's lucky enough living in the area with great access to internet. His mom and dad have IT degree and able to provide him with best equipment so that he can enjoy his first year in school virtually. In contrast, thousands of children of poor women-headed families whom I'm working with in the past 20 years have struggled to continue learning virtually during the pandemic. The National Commission on Child Protection reported that not less than 56% of Indonesia children cannot participate in virtual education process since they live in remote areas, no access to internet, and neither the gadget to allow them following the virtual teaching and learning during the pandemic. Yes, technology is a critical enabling factor in this fast-changing world. However, technology should not replace humans, but should help humans to overcome social disparities, expand lifelong learning processes, and find solutions of lives, so that it helps humans improve the quality of life and the quality of social relations in developing a dignified civilization. We have listened how social entrepreneurs, through their work, create a better world by addressing challenges at community to global level. They have used technology to accelerate the best of human qualities to overcome root causes of problems and inequality by organizing women, youth, and other citizens, building communities, cooperation, and collective action to overcome and respond to different issues. We also learned that collaborative action between social entrepreneurs and corporate is never been as urgent as it this time, where we are facing uncertainty and multiple crises due to the pandemic. Lastly, on behalf of Ashoka Southeast Asia, I would like to thank and congratulate Ashoka Singapore and Malaysia team, Sumitra and the whole organizer team, who have worked tirelessly to organize this event. My high appreciation to Google.org, Marija and team for the partnership in this summit. Finally, thanks to all speakers and contributors who have engaged and actively participated in this summit. The forum is over, but the real work where we all will collaborate is just started. Thank you and have a great evening, everyone.
What an incredible 3 hours we have had together. Here's some three key takeaways I want to share with you and what we've done. The first being we've gained insights on innovations that social entrepreneurs across Asia are undertaking. The second being that we've heard panel discussions on the new media space and also how young people can be leading innovation to address the world's problems. And thirdly, we participated in roundtable discussions on a plethora of thematic areas to help deepen your understanding in the field and also get you inspired. Now that we're at the end of our journey together, I hope you're more inspired to co-learn, to interconnect, and to co-initiate new stories for the future with meaningful participation of young people and using technology as a tool. A big, big thank you to Google.org for their support for this session. Also, a big thank you to all of our panelists and the social entrepreneurs for the incredible work that they're doing. A special shout out to the technical team without whom today's session would not be possible. And finally, I'd like to thank you, our participants, for taking the time to join us on this journey with an open mind and an open heart. I do have one request of you before you log off today, and that's please use Swapcard to connect with someone that you don't know. It could be one of the panelists, it could be one of the organizations who are in the platform, or one of your fellow participants. The internet is a much better place when you connect with other people, and so take that time to make the most out of Swapcard. My name is Lorinda Garcia, and it's been an honor to be your companion tonight on Ashoka's Technology and Humanity Forum. Stay well, stay safe, and see you in Swapcard. Goodbye.